On paper, you won. That's the strange part nobody warns you about. The fight is over. The court said yes. The certificate is real, framed or filed or shoved in the drawer with the passports. And on the days you remember to look at it, it still feels faintly impossible. Your name and his name on the same legal line, the way you used to imagine other people got to have. You are, statistically, doing well. 2 men, 1 household, the kind of combined income that makes a mortgage officer relax. You have the rings, the joint account, the dog who is technically both of yours but emotionally his. You have a marriage that, from the outside, looks like the clean, happy ending of a movie that took the whole country 40 years to finish. And yet here you are at 11 p.m., standing in the kitchen, having the third version of the same argument about whose turn it was to call the plumber. Because the secret about getting everything you fought for is that nobody mentions what comes after. The applause stops, the headlines move on, and then it's just Tuesday, and the dishwasher is broken, and you are 2 men trying to build an ordinary life out of something that was never allowed to be ordinary. This is what that actually feels like from the inside. 1. No one hands you the script. The first thing you learn is that there's no instruction manual, and at first that sounds like freedom. No one tells you who takes out the trash. There's no inherited diagram, no centuries of, the man does this, the woman does that, to argue with or fall back on. You get to invent the whole thing from scratch, which is beautiful for about 6 weeks, right up until you realize that inventing the whole thing from scratch mostly means negotiating. Out loud, every single domestic decision 2 grown men have ever silently assumed someone else would handle. Researchers who study this keep finding the same thing. Couples like you tend to split the housework more evenly, more deliberately, because you actually have to talk about it. There's no default to coast on. The catch is that more fairly is not the same as without resentment. It just means the resentment is itemized. You know exactly who cooked 4 nights this week, because you've been keeping a quiet, loving little ledger in your head, the way everyone swears they don't. And here's the part that surprises the people who romanticize it. Surveys of couples like you find that both partners are more likely to say they do more than the other one. Both of you, simultaneously. 2 men, each privately convinced he is carrying this household on his back. Both technically correct, both technically exhausted. It turns out you didn't escape the universal marital delusion. You just doubled it, so you build your own roles, slowly, by collision. He becomes the one who remembers birthdays. You become the one who remembers the car registration. He handles the money because he's calmer about it. You handle the in-laws because you're better at pretending. None of it was assigned. All of it became permanent anyway, which is its own quiet joke. You threw out the rule book and then wrote an identical one by hand, just with your names in it. The freedom is real. So is the fatigue of a life where nothing is automatic. Every shared decision had to be a conversation, and after enough years, you'd both occasionally kill for a tradition you didn't have to invent on the spot. You wanted a marriage with no script. You got one. Now please, for the love of God, somebody just decide about the plumber. 2. So which one of you is the wife? At some point, someone will ask which one of you is the wife. Sometimes it's a stranger. Sometimes it's a colleague who thinks they're being daring. Sometimes, and this is the one that lands hardest, it's your own aunt at a holiday table, asking with genuine warmth, as if she's just trying to understand the seating chart of your soul. And you'll do the thing you've gotten good at. You'll smile. You'll make the small joke that diffuses it. You'll perform easygoing like it's a second job, because correcting people costs energy you've decided to spend elsewhere. That's the part outsiders don't see. From the outside, your marriage is a symbol, a flag at a parade, a talking point, a sign that the country changed. From the inside, it's a man who left his socks on the floor again. But the world keeps wanting you to be the symbol. People want to know how it works, the way you'd ask about a clever appliance. Who proposed? Who walks down the aisle? Who's the husband? Who's the, you know? And the honest answer, the one you rarely give, is nobody. There's no wife. There's just 2 people, one of whom is currently angry about the thermostat. You learn to read rooms fast. You learn which family members hug you and which ones shake your hand a beat too formally, like you're a business partner he brought home. You learn that, are you 2 still together? Can be asked with real affection and still feel like being checked for a pulse. You become fluent in the micro expressions of people deciding, in real time, how okay they actually are with you. Public support for marriages like yours sits at roughly 68% now, most of the country, genuinely. But that number hides a widening split, and you feel the split personally in the specific 32% who happen to be related to you, or sitting on the co-op board, or pricing your kitchen renovation. A statistic is an average. Your Thanksgiving is not an average. Your Thanksgiving is the one cousin who got quiet, and the brother-in-law who overcompensates by being aggressively normal about it, narrating his own tolerance. So you develop the performance, the version of your marriage that's legible to other people, the version where you don't kiss him goodbye in certain parking lots, not out of shame exactly, but out of a tired math you run automatically. Is this the kind of place where that's free, or where it costs something? You got a marriage the whole country can see. You just didn't realize how much of it you'd spend deciding when to let them. 3. The $100,000 maybe baby. Then there's the question of whether you become a family of 2 or a family of more. And unlike everyone else, you can't do it by accident. This is the line nobody quite prepares you for. A child, for the 2 of you, starts as a spreadsheet. Surrogacy in America runs somewhere between $100,000 and $250,000 by the time there's an actual baby in the actual car seat. Most couples land in the $120 to $160 range. Agency fees, the egg donor, the IVF, the carrier's compensation, the lawyers, and a special insurance policy you'd never heard of and now lie awake costing out. Adoption is its own marathon of home studies and interviews where, in certain states, 2 men still feel like they're auditioning for the right to love someone. So you do the thing straight couples almost never have to. You decide on purpose, with money, after a meeting. And it changes the texture of wanting. There's no oops, no, well, it happened. There is only intention, line-itemed and notarized, which is why fewer male couples than female couples have kids in the house at all. The door is open, but it's a door with a toll booth, and the toll is a down payment on a home you then don't buy. But say you do it. Say the spreadsheet becomes a person. Now you're at school pickup, and you watch the other parents clock you. 2 dads, no mom, who packs the lunch, who signs the form, and you fill out the emergency contact card where it says mother and father, and you cross one out and write your husband's name above the correction like a small act of vandalism against the form itself. And the families. Some came around. The ones who showed up to the wedding stiff and left, 3 years later, weeping at the hospital window over a grandchild they didn't expect to adore. And some didn't. Some sent a card. Some send cards still. The kind that say thinking of you and mean we have decided not to ask follow-up questions. You hold both at once. The in-law who learned to text your kid goodnight, and the parent who has met that same kid twice. That's the part that wears a specific groove in you. You built this family deliberately, expensively, against friction. And then you still have to manage everyone's feelings about it being built at all. You wanted to be a father. You didn't realize the job description included being, permanently, a little bit of a debate. 4. The floor is not nailed down. Here's the thing that lives underneath all of it, quiet as a pilot light. Your marriage is legal because of a single Supreme Court decision from 2015. Not a law you elected, a ruling, 5 votes against 4, that said the Constitution was on your side. And in the years since, you've watched, the way you watch weather, as people in robes and pulpits and statehouses started asking, out loud, whether that ruling should stand. A county clerk took a case all the way up, formally asking the court to throw the whole thing out. In a single recent year, something like 9 states floated bills or resolutions nudging the justices to reconsider. The largest Protestant denomination in the country voted to make overturning your marriage an official priority. Not a fringe whisper, an agenda item passed by a show of hands. None of it has won. All of it sits in your chest. So you do the unromantic thing. You build a binder. Couples like you have a folder, sometimes literal, sometimes a panic-organized cloud drive. With the second parent adoption decree, the medical powers of attorney, the wills, the documents that say if the marriage ever stops counting, this man is still mine and that child is still ours. Straight couples get to assume, you get to file. There's a federal law from 2022 that promises the government will still recognize you, and that other states will too. But read the fine print and it admits the quiet truth. If the 2015 ruling falls, a state could simply stop handing out the license in the first place. You'd still be married. You just have to leave the state to prove it. It does something to intimacy, living on a floor that isn't nailed down. You love him the same. You just love him while also, somewhere in the back of your mind, keeping the receipts. It's hard to fully relax into forever when forever has a docket number and a descent. And the cruelest joke is how normal you have to act about it. You can't spend every dinner litigating your own legitimacy, so you don't. You make the pasta. You argue about the plumber. You let the kids stay up too late. You build the ordinary life right on top of the fault line because the alternative, flinching every day, is no way to be married. You become an expert at a very specific kind of calm. The calm of a man who has read the news and decided for tonight to set the table anyway. 5. Why you stay anyway? So why do it? Why marry into a thing that costs this much, performs this hard, files this many documents, and still has people lined up to vote it away? Because here's what nobody puts in the headlines, the parades, or the surveys. After the symbol fades and the performance gets tiring and the binder sits heavy in the drawer, what you're left with is the thing you actually wanted, which was never the certificate. It was him, specifically him, the one who knows how you take your coffee and exactly which silence means I'm fine and which one means do not ask me right now. The whole impossible apparatus, the court, the cost, the relatives, the clerk, all of it was just scaffolding around the same small, unglamorous miracle every long marriage runs on. Somebody chose you and kept choosing, on the boring Tuesdays especially. You spent years being told your love was a question the country had to answer. And the deepest, driest truth of it is that your marriage isn't a statement, or a symbol, or a battle. It's a man asleep beside you with the blanket stolen to his side, again, and the strange peace of knowing you'd fight the whole circus over again just to keep arguing with this exact idiot for the rest of your life. That's the part they never legislated, and never could. You don't stay because you won. You stay because somewhere along the way, between the spreadsheets and the holidays and the broken dishwasher, winning stopped being the point. He did. The country called it a milestone. You just call it home. And then quietly remind him, for the 4th time, that it was definitely his turn to call the plumber. 2 men, 1 mortgage, a folder full of paperwork proving you're allowed to love each other, and a marriage that, like every marriage, mostly survives on patience, dark humor, and the fact that neither of you wants to be the one who moves out. Welcome to forever. Bring your own binder.